Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. We have here today Nick Sherman, Bring's Director of Enterprise Sales, to discuss the new strategic imperative, choosing the right delivery model. After this presentation, we'll move into a Q&A session, so feel free to enter any questions you may have at any time into your display. Now we'll move on over to Nick.
Okay, great. And Sasha, you can hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you for the introduction, and thank you for everyone for joining. As Sasha mentioned, we're going to be talking about the new strategic imperative and choosing the right delivery model. And what are the different considerations, variables, and factors to think about when you're rolling out your delivery strategy? So again, appreciate everybody joining today. We do only have a half an hour, so just to respect everyone's time and keep it to that half hour, I will jump in here. So we'll start with Amazon, and everyone surely on the call today understands Amazon and the effects that they're having on the marketplace, but really the effects that they're having can't be understated. So we'll talk about a couple of the key facts to focus on and showing Amazon's strategic focus on delivery. In 2017, up 41% from 2016, $23 billion spent on R&D. So again, common information for everyone likely, but these numbers can't be understated in terms of the focus that Amazon has on innovation and specifically around technology. Another interesting stat is in 2017, 13% of Amazon's revenue, that's $22 billion, was spent on shipping. And that's a really big indicator as to the strategic focus, again, that Amazon has on delivering their products to their customers. It really isn't just about the product offering and mix of products that they offer. It's really about how they're getting that to the consumer. So really showing again the focus that Amazon has. And just some interesting numbers at the bottom here. 20,000 new vans ordered in 2017 for their new delivery initiative, and 20,000 new applications submitted for this delivery initiative. So this is really showing that Amazon does want to own that last mile. They want to own how packages are getting delivered to their customer, and they're investing heavily in this. So, that's fine. That's fine to talk about Amazon, but really, what does this mean? And really what it means is that customer expectations are changing. Today, 80% of shoppers want same-day delivery. This is a number that only a few years ago would not be considered fathomable at all. And then as you unpack that number, 61% of shoppers want 1 to 3 hour delivery. They want their package immediately. That is the new normal of consumers in an online space. And again, Amazon creating a lot of this changing expectations from the customer perspective. So what we're seeing is that retailers are really responding to this. 65% of retailers will be offering same day by 2019. And so you can imagine that in the budget meetings and the planning and the forecasting for 2019 and beyond, delivery and that strategic imperative is definitely something that is being discussed. An interesting space or vertical to look at that is really seeing the effects of last mile delivery in growing their online market share is actually the consumer packaged goods space, or CPG. So US online CPG sales have grown twice as fast as total e-commerce sales. And the reason for that is that they're offering now free 2-day shipping and subscription options to their customers. So CPG manufacturers traditionally and other retailers are responding to the new online buying trend by selling their products on Amazon or other online retailers. But what we're seeing now is that CPGs can now do this themselves. They can have their own D2C initiative, and they can offer things like free 2-day shipping to really grow that market share. So the question then becomes, how much control do these CPG companies want to have? How much data do they want to control? And how much of that supply chain do they want to control? So it's interesting to see how a traditional space like this is starting to be disrupted, and they're starting to see a lot of growth by offering different types of delivery channels. So really, what does this mean? It really means that customer expectations again are changing. This is a fast changing market demanding more flexible and faster deliveries. And in order to respond to this, it's important to consider your strategy around delivery and how you're going to streamline your delivery logistics as a strategic imperative in order to not only stay competitive, but to stay future proof. And what I mean by that is we're now seeing that this isn't just a competitive differentiator. It's now becoming the new normal. It's so normalized for same day and rush type delivery, as mentioned previously, for customers, that they're now expecting this, and having a very streamlined strategic approach to this is really critical. At Bring, we call this achieving logistical excellence. This is achieved through having wider reach, more coverage, having optimal efficiency within that coverage and within those channels, and then perfecting the customer experience across every touch point within the supply chain. But this is complicated. This isn't an easy problem to solve. And sophisticated technology is really the main barrier of entry. It's really what's required to be able to look at how you can advance your delivery logistics management processes and solutions. So we'll transition into, what are the variables, what are the factors to consider when choosing the right delivery model? That's really what we came to talk about today. And the first thing to consider is really defining your business goals. It's critical to define what your business goals are, what they mean to you, and what a strategic delivery model really means to your business. So first, think about the competitive differentiation. As we talked about with the Amazon and the consumer packaged goods vertical as an example, it's clear that delivery can really become a competitive differentiator. Now, is that something that you feel as though is relevant to your business? Is that something you feel is something that's achievable as a business goal for your delivery model? So the competitive differentiation is something that a lot of people are thinking about, and what that means. Is cutting costs maybe something that's a primary focus? Are there areas within your supply chain you feel a more optimized and efficient delivery model can get costs out of the supply chain? The customer experience, obviously, very, very important. What does that customer experience look like across each touch point within the supply chain? How are you going to augment or change that customer experience, and what does that mean to you? So really thinking about all those touch points along the supply chain is very, very important. Brand control. What type of branding do you want to have, and how much control across maybe different touch points, whether it's the actual branding on the vehicle or the branding of what your employee is wearing while they're delivering, those types of things. How much control do you want to have, and how much visibility into the data across those different delivery touch points do you want to have? Scale, how quickly you want to scale, how important is it for you to get into new markets, new locations, and the speed. So that pace and what scale you're looking to achieve, very important. And then obviously taking into consideration ROI. Is ROI something that is part of your goal? Is that going to determine success, or is just launching delivery success? So it can mean a lot of different things. So once you've defined your business goals and what that means to you, important then to think about what defines a delivery model. What does a delivery model mean to you and your business? And a main point to raise here is that there really isn't one solution for achieving logistical excellence or choosing the right delivery model. It's really a careful consideration of a number of different elements. And these three main elements really comprise what a delivery model looks like. So 3 things to consider that we'll be talking about, which is delivery timing, fleet type, and delivery type. And you must evaluate each component separately and then as a whole to really determine what is the best fit for your business at this point in time. So transitioning into what is the right fleet type and choosing the appropriate fleet type for your business. And there's really 4 main types of fleets to consider. So the obvious one is an internal fleet. That's really where you're owning the asset, the car, the truck, the van, training and employees under your company are doing the actual delivery. That's really an internal fleet. Also traditionally an external fleet where you're partnering with a traditional 3PL channel or other channel to do that delivery for you. Then there's a hybrid fleet, and a hybrid is really a combination of the two, where you kind of have the best of both worlds and combining that where it makes sense. And then lastly, a crowdsource fleet. And we all know the changes that Uber and that on-demand marketplace type economy is having. So these are non-employees, ample coverage that's out there that's able for you to leverage and then deliver within your supply chain. So we'll jump into considering the pros and cons, or really the variables to consider within each one of these delivery models. So the first would be the internal fleet. And companies that want to own the entire supply chain so that they maintain full control over the effectiveness, quality, and speed of the delivery process are often really choosing that internal fleet. They want to have complete control of the branding and of the customer experience and of all of the data and touch points along the way. They feel as though that's their way and that's their differentiator to maximize customer loyalty. So an internal fleet really about owning that entire supply chain and having complete control. In regards to data, having full access to all of that customer data, all the insights that are going to be coming along the way, and then having the ability to make actionable insights and things on that moving forward, and iterating on how to get better with your delivery. Obviously, avoiding the extra costs and lack of visibility that may come with partnering with a third party or external fleet. But obviously considering the fact that this is something that takes cost outlay, and there's overhead involved in actually rolling out an internal fleet. So those are kind of the variables to consider when looking at an internal fleet as an option. Conversely, there is the external fleet. And this is really the complete opposite or inverse of that, in that you're a company and you want to focus on your existing business. You want to focus on your core competencies, and you feel as though you don't have the resources to maybe build and manage an in-house fleet, train and manage the drivers and all the different systems and processes that go into that. So it's really about, in leveraging an external fleet, maybe wanting to start delivering quickly, and then testing and iterating over time to get better. Maybe you're looking to attract specifically a new customer base in one region, and you feel as though that external fleet has proficiency and insights into that region, so you can actually move there very quickly. It also allows you to potentially maintain a larger delivery footprint as you can partner with different external fleets in different areas, and then maintain that larger delivery footprint. And again, remaining focused on your existing business and core operation. Hybrid multiple fleets, very simple to look at. This is really a combination of both internal and external. A point to make here is that at Bring, we are seeing this as becoming increasingly more common, having that hybrid of maybe in some instances with some products in some geographies, it makes sense to have an internal driver and an internal fleet fulfilling on those deliveries. Maybe that's a strategic product or a strategic geography. But then in other areas where maybe you don't have presence or you don't have that local proficiency, maybe there's regulatory issues, things like that you don't want to get involved in, it makes sense to partner with an external fleet to get access to those regions. So it really allows you to scale up and down as needed and have the best of both options. But the thing to consider is that this is a little bit more sophisticated. There are different variables that are involved. So having technology to be able to help you with that and optimize those different channels is important. And then finally, the last fleet to mention is the crowdsource fleet. And everyone's aware of what crowdsourcing really means. And it's an emerging method of fulfillment that leverages networks of local non-professional couriers to deliver packages. So there's a lot of these crowdsourced carriers that are popping up. I mean, we're all familiar with the DoorDashes and the Postmates and the Delivs of the world. And they really allow you to have immediate coverage and flexibility to scale up and down as needed. They provide you with access to areas that maybe are limited by a lack of local presence or workforce restrictions, and again, give you just that flexibility to scale up and down. Obviously, with the crowdsourced providers, similarly to an external fleet, less worry about the expense of a warehouse, the management of the employees, all of those things, and gives you a lot of options for different types of delivery channels. With the concentration, for instance, that crowdsource can provide, you can immediately offer maybe same-day delivery in a specific geography that you just wouldn't be able to without that coverage. So there's a lot of flexibility that having a crowdsourced fleet can provide you, and that scalability. So once you've determined the type of fleet or the combination of fleets that you may want to employ, important to think about delivery timing. So there's really four main types of delivery timing to consider, which is obviously same day. We're all familiar with that. Looks like that's that rush 1 to 3 hour time window type delivery where I want my product, I want it now. Next day, obviously a little bit more organized, a little bit more routed. You're still providing the immediacy of delivery, but it is that planned, more scheduled type of delivery. Click and collect or in-store pickup, leveraging bricks and mortar and retail locations is becoming increasingly popular. There's a lot of benefits that we'll get into. And then the last is really just your traditional delivery model of economy and just kind of the cheapest option available. So, in looking at each one of these different things to consider, for same day, obviously you're providing that instant gratification to your customer base. You're giving them their product right away when they want it. We talked about the changing customer expectations and how this is really becoming something that is the new normal. So this can really become that competitive differentiation where you're offering your product in that immediate time and channel of delivery. So something to consider there in terms of whether or not same day is important to you. From a B2B perspective, obviously the ability to get more products on the customer shelves faster for increased sales. And then, the challenges to consider with same day is it is a high delivery cost, and whether or not that is something that can be passed on to the customer. Oftentimes it can be, but there's obviously different things to consider in terms of the delivery cost and what that means to your business. When you look back to, the money that Amazon is spending on their shipping, we're all seeing those commercials online, right, on TV right now regarding the free shipping and what they're doing in the holiday season, and obviously costs come with that. Maintaining sufficient inventory for same-day delivery, very important. In order to be close to the customer, you may need to consider different types of warehousing options and maintaining an inventory supply closer to the customer and making sure that that is sufficient. Obviously, the capacity to be able to deliver is something to really consider with same day. In regards to next day, the same things can apply in terms of improving that overall customer experience and it be providing you with a competitive differentiating advantage. The main thing to note here is, as I mentioned earlier, was that there is a little bit more room for planning and cost effectiveness to happen with next day delivery, in the sense that it can be more routed and it can be something that's a little bit more carefully considered in terms of how you're providing that delivery versus just a one-off delivery in a same day type situation. Same thing applies to B2B, being able to get more products on the customer shelves quickly. And then what are the challenges? Really, high delivery costs are usually absorbed by the retailer or the brand. So, how much cost absorption for delivery are you willing to take on? Or is this something that you do want to try to pass on to the customer? So that balance in terms of the delivery costs are something definitely to consider. And then the same challenge of maintaining that local and sufficient inventory to be able to fulfill on next day. And then finally, with click and collect, in-store, curbside pickup, this is something that's, again, becoming more and more popular. It's a way that retailers see that you can improve and increase foot traffic to your brick and mortar locations and just improve getting people into the store, obviously, to then continue to shop and consume product. Reduce costs, obviously, associated with delivery. It can be much less expensive to have the customer come to you, and then improving, the customer's trust and confidence in your brand, in the experience that they're having with that in-store pickup. So definitely a lot of benefits to consider in regards to that in-store click and collect model. The main challenges are really straightforward. It's really the logistics and the organization of how this is implemented. You need to consider, how is that customer going to be interacting with your store? Does the store layout need to change in order for them to be coming into the store and picking up their product? Is there ample space around the store for a curbside to occur where the customer can drive up and an employee can come and put that material into their vehicle? So poor implementation can really make this type of model challenging. So things to consider are really considering your layout, your store, what's unique about it, and then ensuring that there is sufficient training and things like that that are occurring with staff. Out of stock products, obviously earmarking inventory specifically for pickup versus in-store consumption are things to consider. And then obviously increase staff potentially, or just increase training to be able to handle those pickups as they're happening in store. Okay, moving forward into the delivery type. So, there's different types of delivery that can occur within these different models. And there's really four main types to consider. Big and bulky, which is really requiring more time on site and possibly more resources. This, of course, will be relevant in determining what type of delivery timeframes you're offering to customers. Does the customer need to be home? Does it need to be a before or after work type delivery? So with bigger products, obviously, there's a little bit more on the line in terms of scheduling and having that specific time window, not something that can just be dropped off. So definitely something to consider in regards to that big and bulky channel. The next being white glove. So white glove delivery is relevant maybe for pricier items or for items that require unpacking or even installation. So think furniture or a piece of electronics that maybe need to be installed, where there may, again, similar to big and bulky, need to be a team there to help with that installation. This is also something that can be offered as an optional value add to your premium customers or subscribers that are maybe paying that extra fee, and you can provide this to them as that value add, depending on your overall delivery model and fee structure. In terms of small parcel, this is obviously your more traditional type of delivery, that smaller package. And within that small parcel, you can pair this with a lot more delivery time frame options and types of delivery, as long as the infrastructure and resources are in place to support it. So, with the smaller packages, a little bit more flexibility in terms of what you can consider. And then finally, grocery. There's a lot of different things to be considered with grocery, of course, keeping in mind the fact that it is perishables, there's cold chain considerations, but there's a lot of different things to consider in regards to what's going on with grocery. So finally, selecting the delivery charge. Now, this is definitely an interesting conversation because this is such a new consideration of strategy for a lot of businesses. There can be a lot of opinions and a lot of things to consider really when looking at the delivery charge. The first thing to consider around brand value is delivery going to be an add-on or a complete part of the brand experience? Is delivery going to be an integral aspect of your brand in which a heavy investment is required? So, depending on the investment and the amount of value you feel that's going to provide into and inject into your brand, may be really important to take into consideration in how you're costing, how you're passing costs on to the customer, and how much you're willing to take on. In terms of competition, obviously it's best to map out the competitive landscape in the region that you're covering. What are your competitors charging in your exact market or similar market? So looking at your competitors and the going rates for the type of delivery that you're looking to consider, really important to look at and map out and understand fully. In terms of the ROI, at the end of the day, the ROI is really going to be that important consideration. You must start delivering. It's important to get the data, test and measure the data to determine the proper delivery cost structure. So often really getting going, just delivering and then really iterating on that and learning and getting better over time is really important. And then finally, that product and price relationship. So there should be a reasonable relationship between the product and the shipping price. What type of product are you delivering? Is it a more premium or less premium type product? Customers don't mind, for instance, paying extra to know that a fragile product is going to be delivered in one piece. And so that product and price relationship obviously is really important to consider. So after considering the delivery timing, the fleet type, the channel in which that's going to be delivered, and then finally the delivery charge, you're starting to consider what that delivery model looks like. So I'll move into a little time. I believe we have 5 minutes for Q&A, but really appreciate everyone listening in and understanding the different variables to consider for their delivery model.
Thanks, Nick. That was great. We do have a couple questions that have come in. One question, hopefully you can answer. What are the next steps towards actually launching a D2C strategy?
Yeah, that's a great question. And this is a relatively new space and strategic offering to consider. So, really those next steps can be the hardest part. It's okay, this makes sense, I understand it, but what do I actually have to do to get this delivery model off the ground and move forward? And really you can break it down into 6 bullets. So really quickly, you want to establish what your goals are, what the timeline for rollout of your delivery is, the technology that needs to be in place, the different partners within that technology that's going to help you get that implementation up and running. A big thing to consider is how you're going to be receiving payments. If you're new to the online world, how are you actually going to collect money and then deliver? And then obviously your fulfillment. So those 6 pillars are really kind of how you can organize the next steps towards launch.
Great. We have another question here. What delivery model are you seeing the most traction with?
Yeah, great question. And I would say that, there's no one specific delivery model that's going to be a one size fits all. I'll start with that. But one that we are seeing that's gaining more traction is that hybrid model. And really the hybrid is a combination of internal and external fleets where, it makes sense for specific regions and specific types of products to be delivered with your employees. You want to have complete control over that area, that region, that type of delivery. So it makes sense to have the investment in that internal fleet. But then in other areas, you want to flex up and down. So that hybrid example is something that we're seeing a lot more of. It's a little bit more complex. It takes time to get there. But once you have a clear strategy defined, easier to deliver on that.
We do have another question. What do you think about the strategy of when you only have deliveries during a single time frame? So for example, lunchtime.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And it really, I think, comes back to, what type of product are you delivering? How does that relate to your strategic imperatives? So going back to defining your business goals, and is that a competitive differentiator for you? In your landscape, are other people doing that? Is a lunchtime delivery something that's unique? Bring it back to the customer experience and understand, how is that going to maybe increase sales based on offering that channel? So I think, could potentially be a really great and differentiating type of idea.
Thank you. That's all we have time. I do see there was a few other questions, so we'll get back to you directly after the webinar. If not today, then tomorrow. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. We'll be sending the webinar recording to everyone, so you can send it to others in your organization who may not have been able to join us. A survey should pop up on your screen momentarily for you to answer just a few short questions. We want to thank you again, and we hope to see you again at our next webinar.
Thanks very much.